Hey, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. I am so excited to talk about this topic because I think there is a lot of confusion on the topic of self sabotage. Now, because it has the word self in it, you might think, some think, that it is intentional, but I promise you it isn't. Nobody goes into business to sabotage their success on purpose. And yet, so many of us unconsciously do so in so many different ways. Now, fortunately, when you know what to look for, you can figure out which of these apply to you and do something about it. But before we start getting into what to look for, how to identify them, and what to do about it, I want to normalize just the whole topic of self sabotage in business. If you are a solopreneur, and if you are paying attention to me, you probably are, because the people I work with are the folks who have had a successful career in corporate, nonprofit, academia, or one of the professions. They've been successful. They know how to be successful working for other people. And then they reach a point where they want to work for themselves. Sometimes they get pushed out. Sometimes they get laid off. Sometimes they age out. Sometimes they need to move because their partner's transferred. There are many different reasons. But also, those are what I would call the accidental solopreneurs. But then many of us intentionally go out on our own because we decide that we're ready to go all in on us. We are ready to bet on us as the horse in the race. And we want to bring all of our talents to bear, all of our creativity to bear on something that benefits us instead of a corporation, a university, or an organization. You've probably heard it said that owning your own business is the ultimate personal development path. And that may actually be true because I won't say it forces you to face things, but it invites you to face things about yourself, about your beliefs, and about your behaviors. Things that actually need to be addressed, identified, addressed, worked through in order for you to be successful. Now, if you happen to be fortunate enough to have grown up in an entrepreneurial family, then from a very early age, you heard about risk taking and you heard about experimentation and you heard about trying things that worked and trying things that didn't work. But for most of us, starting our own business after having had a successful career in academia, nonprofit, or corporate life, what we've learned instead is how to follow rules, how to do what is expected of us to the best of our ability. And we generally have also learned not to exceed what is expected of us, not to step on other people's toes, not to work outside of our job description. And oddly enough, these types of biases tend to follow us and become part of the way we operate, no matter how high we climb up the food chain. So while you do have more agency if you reach the C-suite or upper middle management, which is the sort of the launching point for many of the people who start their own business, you may still be more focused on avoiding mistakes than you are on looking for opportunities to take risks and to learn new things. It's simply what we're used to. So, what I'm about to share, and if you listen to this week's episode on the Driven Woman Entrepreneur podcast, where I talk about this as well, self sabotage for solopreneurs, you are not hearing any shame coming from me. You are not hearing any blame coming from me. You are not hearing any lack of respect coming from me. I identify with all of the things that I'm about to talk about. I have done them all, and many of them, it is an ongoing challenge for me to monitor, identify, and resolve because I'm human. It's human nature to seek pleasure and avoid pain. It's human nature. So when we sabotage our success, most of the time, we are doing so unconsciously because of fear. And that's a very normal thing. So, how might this look in your business? How might you identify, recognize that you, in fact, are sabotaging your success? I'm going to give a few different areas to look for. One of them I've already brought up, which is the fear of failure. Now, fear of failure is normal, it's natural. You know, if you are in little league or t-ball or playing soccer as a kid, anything, you don't want to screw up. You don't want to make mistakes. You don't want to fail in an individual sport, and you definitely don't want to fail in a team sport because you don't want to be blamed by your team members, right? That's human nature. Everybody wants to get good grades. Everybody wants to be popular. Everybody wants to be a winner. Nobody wants to be a loser. And so many of us, which I find especially for highly sensitive, creative people who are very, very smart, very capable, very competent, you would think that they would be able to tolerate failure. But oftentimes, people who are very smart, very capable, very competent have not developed a lot of experience with failure, mainly because they've always been successful. And this is also true of me. I thought it was smart to only do things I knew I could be successful with. Like, I thought that was leveraging my strengths. But in reality, only doing things I knew I could do, only doing things I knew I could do well, only doing things I knew I would be successful doing meant that my comfort zone just became very rigid over time. I wasn't taking risks. And when you're not taking risks, you do not have the opportunity to grow. So, one of the primary ways that we hold ourselves back and we sabotage our success in solopreneurship is through fear of failure. Now, fear of failure is a thing, but the behaviors we need to look for are not doing anything new, even if what we've been doing is no longer working, or perhaps it never did work. So if you have a particular program, a particular service offering, a particular way of working with people, and it's not selling well, it's not converting well, people are not giving you positive feedback about it, the pool of people who seem to be interested in this service or offer is literally drying up, and you won't try something new, you're already failing. And a lot of people won't try something new until they're literally back against the wall, no leads, no clients, no sales. Now their financial security, their livelihood is at risk, and now they're willing to try something new. I do not want to work with someone who's at that point. It's I won't say it's too late, but when we let things go that long and we get to that point of desperation, in order to figure out what you're going to do instead of what you've been doing, there is trial and error. There is risk taking. So the fear of failure means risk avoidance, which is another way that we can sabotage our success as an independent professional. If we are afraid of failing, we're not going to take risks. But if we're not going to take risks, we have no way of knowing what will work. We have to be able to experiment. And I understand that's scary. I have stuck with things far too long that were not working or were no longer working. or were not working in the way that I wanted them to, the way that I needed them to, the way that my bank account and my CPA and my spouse needed them to. So it's like a whole cluster. I won't say the F word, but it's a whole cluster, right? Is risk avoidance, fear of failure. You know what else gets in that recipe? Sunk cost fallacy. If you've been following me for any length of time, you hear me talk about this a lot. The sunk cost fallacy is I've put so much time, energy, effort, money, opportunity cost into this thing, I can't just walk away from it. I hear this all the time. I especially hear this, and this is actually very sad and unfortunate, that many people who start their own business, they hire help too quickly because they say, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do anything. I literally don't know what to do. So they take a course, they join a program, and they're looking to the coach or consultant or program leader, course creator, to literally tell them what to do. In a way, it's like telling them not only what to do, but what to want. And while that might get you out of the starting blocks, it's only a matter of time before you don't want to do it anymore, because you're still in that mode of seeking permission to proceed from someone else. It's your business. So one of the ways we self-sabotage ourselves without having any idea that we're doing so is when, because we don't want to make mistakes, because we want to avoid risk-taking, because we might make mistakes, before we have any experience at all, we haven't figured anything out, we believe that if I join this coaching program, if I hire this person, if I buy this course, that it will help me figure it out. No, it will give you someone else's path. It will give you one path. And of course, then I've succumbed to all of these things too. I don't know how many courses I bought. I don't know how many programs I joined. I don't know how many memberships I have participated in because I didn't want to do the experimentation. I didn't want to try and fail. I wanted to avoid making mistakes. You see how this all fits under the umbrella of fear of failure? I only want to do the proven thing. Well, you know how many people are out there selling you the proven thing? Tons. Tons. There are so many courses, so many coaching programs, so many high-end thises and that's promising. You want to have your own business? This is the path. It kind of reminds me of the selling of religion, now that I think of it. You want to get into heaven? This is the way. Don't go that way. You're going to get stuck in the corridor. You're never going to get in. This is the way. And so a lot of people start their business that way. And then when it's not working, they don't know what to do. And they blame themselves. But because they've already put so much into it, so much hope, so much faith, so much money, so much time, attention, effort, energy, they think they need to keep doing it. So the sunk cost fallacy is another way we sabotage ourselves. Just because you put a lot into it, if it's not working, or it's no longer working, or you no longer love it, or you never loved it, but you think you need to keep doing it, let me be the one to tell you, you do not. You can uncheck that box. You can unmake that decision, because it's almost impossible to get yourself to get up every day without a boss and make yourself do something that you don't enjoy doing. It's a great way to burn out and be depressed. So far we've talked about the fear of failure, the avoidance of risk, and the sunk cost fallacy. Some other ways that I see and hiring, sort of like what I call outsourcing our responsibility as a business owner. What I mean by that is when you don't wanna do the work of figuring it out, any of it, you buy someone else's proven solution. There's a handful of people who've become very wealthy selling proven solutions that did not work for 97% of the people who buy them because they didn't first do the work of experimentation because they wanted to avoid failure, because they wanted to avoid risk. So by buying someone else's proven solution because they wanted to avoid failure, they actually did fail because they don't have a business that's sustainable or maybe even a business at all. And that's very sad. And unfortunately, hundreds of thousands of people have succumbed to this, and then they blame themselves. Another way that is passion and or purpose. Now, I love me some passionate people. I love purpose-driven people. And I would absolutely, without any reservation, consider myself to be a passionate, purpose-led individual. I think those are resources that absolutely help you take the risk of starting your own business, take the risks of putting yourself out there, marketing yourself, selling your services, building a community, if that's part of your business model. Passion, I think, is very important. And purpose is also very important. And depending on your business model and who you sell to, passion and purpose may be absolutely necessary, without which you wouldn't have a business. But they're not enough. If you have passion and you have purpose, but you don't have the third P, you do not have a business. You have a hobby, and a very expensive one at that. The third P, you probably already guessed it, is profit. Too many women in particular, I'm sorry to say, start a business simply based on passion. And there is a ton of messaging and marketing out there that encourages people to do just that. I could probably Google right now, build a business on your passion. I could Google start a business as a multi-passionate person, which I also have a problem with that term because it implies that passion is enough. Passion is enough to get you into things, relationships, addictions, obsessions of all kinds, and businesses, along with hobbies and all sorts of things. Passion can absolutely get you started. Passion is responsible for people initiating all kinds of things, from affairs to you name it. But as a source of fuel that is sustainable over time, passion sucks. Because passion is emotional, and emotions are notoriously fickle, aren't they? They go up and they go down. Now, you might be a passionate person in general. I am, but I'm not passionate every single day, every single moment of every single day. So if I was relying on my passion to get me started and keep me going, I would be SOL. If you don't know what that means, look it up in the Urban Dictionary. I would truly be SOL. And purpose is also not a reliable long-term source of fuel for business. A lot of people start businesses because they have a sense of purpose. A lot of nonprofits are also started because of a sense of purpose. And the whole area of social entrepreneurship is all about purpose. Now, I have done the Strengths Finder assessment. I'm a big fan of it. And of my top 5 strengths, number 4 is significance. It's baked into my DNA. Significance means if it doesn't have a sense of purpose, I'm not doing it. I need to do things that have a sense of purpose. I am a purpose-fueled, purpose-led individual. I want to do things that matter. I want to do things that have an impact. That's just who I am and how I am, and you might be the same. But like passion, it's not enough. I think we need all 3: to start a business, to sustain a business, and to be successful in that business. Passion, purpose, and profit. Now, you don't have to be a hardcore capitalist. You don't have to be someone who exploits the labor of others. You don't have to be focused on making $1 billion. But you do need to have an eye on the bottom line. Always. And it takes longer to turn a profit in a solopreneur business, in a micro business. It takes time. It takes time to turn a profit. And so when we're not paying attention to that profit, we're not monitoring it, we're not measuring it, we're not committed to it, we will make decisions that don't guarantee, or at least to the best of our ability, don't guarantee that we're even going to be around in 6 months or a year or 5 years. Unless you have a charity or a nonprofit, your business has to be profitable. It has to. Otherwise, it's going to strain you, drain you, exhaust you, demoralize you. And I'm sad to see how many women I've known who didn't even realize their business wasn't profitable until several years into it. They just knew that they were working really hard and didn't feel like they were making nearly enough money for that amount of effort. There's a couple other things I want to cover before we wrap. I talk about the default yes quite a bit. The default yes is sort of the impulsive, people-pleasing way of agreeing to things without really thinking about them. Now, I happen to have ADHD, so a part of that is the trait of impulsivity. A lot of people with ADHD are people pleasers. So it's the novelty of someone saying, hey, can you help me with this? Hey, I'd like you to speak to my audience. Hey, I'd like to have you on my podcast. Hey, I'd like you to co-author this book. Hey, can you take a look at my website and tell me what you think? Or, hey, I have this idea for a business. Can I run it by you? Now, I was always the person that said yes, because it's like, ooh, it's novel, it's new, it's fresh. I don't really know what it's going to be. So curiosity, impulsivity, and people pleasing. Yes, yes, yes. When you have a default yes, you basically teach people that they can ask anything of you and you'll agree to it, which inevitably leads to scope creep, another form of self-sabotage in business, and overcommitting. I have been a chronic overcommitter for decades. And inevitably, it leads to burnout. It leads to exhaustion. It leads to resentment, because I just said yes too much. And then once I said yes, I felt that I needed to see it through. Otherwise, I was being a jerk. Now, I never say yes to anything immediately. I have a new rule for myself. And I trained myself out of the default yes. I still have it. It's still in there. It's still a default, but I've trained myself that when anything is asked of me by anyone, unless it's immediate family, I hit the pause button. I give a socially acceptable response. That sounds interesting. That sounds fun. That sounds intriguing. I need to take a look at my calendar, my other commitments, to see if I can actually agree to do that. Let me get back to you. Now, of course, people like yes. Yes feels good, makes them feel good to get a yes, makes me feel good to give a yes. But I have learned from lots and lots and lots of experience that the default yes was sabotaging my success, because my inability to say no or say, I'll get back to you, meant that I was actually prioritizing other people's needs, wishes, wants, preferences, and priorities over my own routinely. I was always doing the things that other people wanted of me, which meant the things that I wanted of me, the things that would actually move the needle in my business, they stayed on my to-do list, but they just kept falling to the bottom and then getting transferred to the next list and the next and the next. And eventually, with many of them, I just felt so crappy looking at those things undone that I took them off the list and just said, I'm never going to do that. That is an absolute sabotage of my success. And maybe this sounds familiar to you too, because a lot of people do it. We've talked about fear of failure, risk avoidance, sunk cost fallacy, scope creep, the default yes, and the belief that passion and purpose are enough, but without profit, they really aren't. There's 3 more things I want to tell you in the next 3 minutes. One is not asking for help, waiting too long to ask for help, or asking for the wrong kind of help. I've mentioned that not knowing what kind of business you want and just taking someone's program or course and basically letting them tell you what you want and then what you should do and then attempting to do it. That's not actually asking for help. That's delegating responsibility to someone else. And that's never going to make you feel like a business owner. In fact, it's probably going to maintain you firmly in imposter syndrome. And I'm not saying you shouldn't buy courses, hire coaches, or join programs. I am a coach. So obviously I believe in the power of coaching, and I believe in the power of programs. I'm in a couple of programs right now. I think it's a matter of timing, and it's a matter of knowing what you need when you need it. If we hire help too soon, we're avoiding doing the work of taking ownership of our business, taking responsibility for our business. We're sort of sidestepping that. And then if it doesn't work, we can always blame the person who sold us the course or enrolled us in their coaching program. I think it makes a lot more sense to start lean, to start scrappy, to DIY things for a little bit, because it gives you the experience of taking risks, of making choices, of dancing with failure, of experimenting, of being curious, and really getting to understand how it feels for you to be the boss, your own boss. So I do think that the timing is really important. And when we either refuse to hire self confidence in your own ability to be your own boss, if you get too much help too soon. But if you try to go too far on your own with no help at all, you sabotage your success because there's too many things you need to learn to do as a solopreneur. And the time it takes for you to learn how to do all those things without help really holds you back. So it's learning to trust yourself, to hire help at the right time, and not refuse it or glom onto it when you really aren't ready for it and you really don't have a context. Two more things. Not having a plan. Now, I don't think most solopreneurs need a formal business plan like you would need for a corporation. But having no plan at all is a recipe for disaster. It is absolutely a self-sabotage. No plan. And a lot of people will say, well, left my job, left my career path. I'm just going to give this whole entrepreneur thing a try. Don't bother. Really, it's going to be very frustrating and expensive. You got to at least have some kind of plan. Doesn't have to be really robust, but you do need a plan because, and it's also why passion and purpose aren't enough. Because a lot of people start a business with passion, purpose, no real plan. It'll carry you for a while. It really will, especially if you surround yourself with other people who are in the same stage. And I'll get to that in a moment. But sooner or later, you're going to encounter difficulties. The passion is going to dissipate. The purpose is going to be questioned. And with no plan and no identification of the profit potential, you'll flounder and you'll get discouraged and you may not be able to restart your engine. Your plan can always be revised. I'm constantly revising my plan. But with no plan at all, you should not be surprised when you don't make progress. It would be like going to the airport with a suitcase, putting a blindfold on, and telling someone to lead you to a plane. For real? Which plane? Where are you going? Where do you want to get to? You kind of have to know some of the basics. And the last thing I see that people do to self-sabotage, especially relatively early stage first-time business owners, is they surround themselves with other people who are in the exact same scenario that they are. What I call wrong rooms. Now, don't get me wrong. I think we all need to be part of a supportive community, especially when we're stepping out on our own for the first time, especially if you're an extrovert like me, because solopreneurship can be very lonely. And when you get stuck, when you have those dark nights of the soul, when you feel like you don't know what you're doing or what you're doing isn't working, and you have fears and doubts and confusion, you absolutely need other people around you who don't just love you because they're friends or family, because those folks are going to say, oh, you're going to figure it out. You're going to be a huge success. You've always been successful. Well, while that might be nice and maybe even a little encouraging, it's not what you actually need. You don't need a pat on the head. But if you are only surrounding yourself with other people who are in the exact same stage of business you are, they may be able to give you emotional support. They may be able to give you a little tidbit here or there that'll help you solve some small problem that you're having. But generally speaking, they're having the same problems you are. And so you're all sort of circling together, but nobody's actually able to exit the problem scenario. So I think the best types of support that people need in business are communities, programs, even one-on-one coaching or consultation with someone more experienced. Someone who isn't just going to pat you on the head and say, "Oh yeah, me too, girl, me too." But who's going to say, "That's a very common problem for the stage of business you're in. Let's figure it out. Let's talk about what your options are." Someone that can normalize your experience, but then help you figure out how to resolve the problem, not just make you feel better because they have problems too. And you probably do need to evolve the groups of people that you surround yourself with as you evolve as a business owner. And a lot of people have trouble with that because they think it's being disloyal. I see this a lot. So people who are actually able to progress much faster in their evolution as a business owner remain where they are because they're surrounding themselves with people who were a very good fit for them a couple of years ago. And out of a sense of loyalty, they may remain in that group, but they've actually outgrown it. And I say, stay friends, stay connected on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, but allow yourself to evolve to other communities as you evolve as a business owner. Because eventually, just staying with your homegirls who may not be progressing at all or at the same rate that you could be will unconsciously sabotage your success. So you know that I am the speaker of uncomfortable truths, and these have been some uncomfortable truths, but they are spoken with love, respect, understanding of just how hard this solopreneur stuff is, and because I want you to succeed. I want you to succeed to your wildest expectations, and I don't want it to exhaust you in the process or take forever. If you want to partner with someone who would be just as committed to your success as you are, and who's actually quite skilled at identifying and helping you resolve ways you might be sabotaging yourself, reach out and connect with me. The first step is a free consultation where we can talk about exactly what's going on in your business and whether I might be the person to help you fix it. That's all for now. I look forward to seeing you next week at the next live stream. Thanks for being here.